Good evening and welcome to the Roseville City Council meeting and Housing Authority meeting of March 5th, 2025. I'd like to welcome you all and call the meeting to order and ask our clerk to please read the roll.
Thank you. We'll start off with Vice Mayor Elbert. Councilmember Haudteschelt.
Here.
Councilmember Mendonça.
Here.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Here.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Thank you. We have a special guest in the audience tonight who I'd like to request lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have could be our only time seeing her here, first and last time in our audience. It's Claire Scheidenberger, our city attorney's daughter, senior at Roseville High School and here for her government class. So I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, Claire, and ask you to lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Thank you, Claire. I'd like to ask our clerk to please announce the meeting procedures.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting. Agendas are available at the end of the staff table to your right or on our city's website. All comments from the audience should be directed to the city council and not to staff members or any member of the audience. All speakers must speak from the podium as this meeting is being recorded tonight. For items that are not listed on the agenda, members of the public may address the city council regarding any item that is not listed on tonight's agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of our city council. Public comment is limited to 25 minutes for the first segment, and each speaker will be given 3 minutes. If the time limitation is reached during the first segment, individuals will have a second opportunity to make a public comment in the second segment just prior to council comments. The Brown Act does prohibit our city council from discussing, debating, or taking actions on items that are not listed on the agenda. The Brown Act also allows for the public to comment on all items that are listed on tonight's agenda. Speakers will have 5 minutes to provide input that should be relevant to the items that are listed on tonight's agenda and for consideration. Time will be monitored, and once the red light begins to blink at the podium, we request that the speaker please conclude their comments. The City Council encourages public participation and requests that you be courteous during the meeting. Lastly, if addressing the City Council tonight, please consider stating your name for the record. With that, welcome to the City of Roseville.
Thank you, Carmen. I will open it up for public comment and ask, I have 3 speaker cards here and we'll go in order here. I have Daya Sandeep. Do you want to come forward? And after, I will have Vinslata Manshit ready. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, esteemed mayor and council members, and namaste. My name is Diya Sandeep, and I am a Hindu-American 8th grade student living in the city of Roseville. I am a youth volunteer for HSS, Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, which aims to uphold Hindu values such as Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the whole world is one family, and Nar Seva, Narayan Seva, service to humanity, is service to God. The month of October holds a special significance to Hindus across the globe, as it is the month in which we celebrate Diwali, the Festival of Lights. This festival encourages us to strive for moral order, right action, and the promotion of peace. Though we do several community outreach projects throughout the year, we take extra effort during this time, utilizing the opportunity to give back to the community through a variety of service projects to make the city better and stronger. One prominent initiative called Seva Diwali is a nationwide project which strives to make a difference in the lives of those suffering with food insecurity. Seva translates to selfless service. This not only helps the needy, but develops the characters of leadership and giving back to the community. During this drive, hundreds of people make their home collection centers for their neighbors to contribute. People are encouraged to donate non-perishable vegetarian food items, food pantries, and homeless shelters. Last year, through this project, we collected about 725,000 pounds of supplies across 38 states. In the greater Sacramento area alone, 8,300 pounds were donated to 14 food banks and shelters, including the Salvation Army in Roseville. To spread awareness for this project, we also have a Diwali parade of lights in which we drive around the city with our cars decorated with lights. We were glad to have Councilman Scott Albert, who flagged off this year's parade and participated with his decorated car. As we celebrate Diwali, we want to share the light and illumination of selfless service with all our fellow citizens. For a healthy society, the most important thing is to respect each other's beliefs and practices. October being the Hindu Heritage Month will truly play an important role in helping people understand the beliefs and contributions to the Hindu community and help our city grow and develop. I want to thank the City of Roseville for taking this important step towards creating an accepting society for Hindu adults, kids, and teenagers like me. I look forward to serving the city to the best of my capacity and playing my part in making it an excellent place to live. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Vince Lada, are you here? And then after we'll have Ishana, and then we'll have anyone else who wants to make public comment. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, esteemed Mayor, Councilman, and Vice Mayor. Namaste. My name is Venkata Manish Maram Reddy, and I'm an undergrad freshman living in Roseville. Volunteer with Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, HSS. The annual Health for Humanity Yogathon, or Surya Namaskar Yajna, organized by the Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, USA, HSS USA, began on Jan 18th. This 16-day event aimed to raise awareness about yoga and its benefits in achieving a healthy body, mind, and spirit. Surya Namaskar combines simple yoga postures into 10 steps with essential breathing techniques, offering many health benefits for body and mind. Each year on Jan 14th, Hindus worldwide celebrate Makar Sankranti, a festival marking the changes of seasons. Makar Sankranti brings longer days, symbolizing the arrival of sunshine in our life. HSS organized the Health for Humanity Yogathon to honor this occasion from Jan 18th to Feb 2nd this year. HSS launched this health awareness initiative in 2007, and this year it celebrated its 18th anniversary. Since its interpretation, participants of all faith and backgrounds from 43 states have actively joined the Yogathon through yoga centers, community organizations, schools, and colleges. Together, we performed over 4 million Surya Namaskar over the past several years. Community leaders and elected officials across the nation has expressed their appreciation for this initiative and encouraged their residents to participate and embrace the benefit of healthy lifestyle. This year, HSS invited community groups, yoga centers, students, and individuals to learn and take part of Health for Humanity Yogathon. Today, I am proud to share that the event has successfully concluded, bringing people together in spirit of health, well-being, and unity. This program was open to people of all ages, gender, and race. We look forward to partnering with the city to connect with even more community members in the future. Our goal is to ensure that as many people as possible in our city can take advantage of and benefit from this initiative. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and dhanyavad.
Thank you very much. Ishana, are you here? Good evening.
Good evening, esteemed Mayor and Council members, and namaste. My name is Ishna Dattusalia. I'm a high school senior living in the city of Roseville. Today, I'm honored to share the inspiring story of the Maha Kumbh Mela, which is a spiritual fair which has been named the world's largest and most peaceful gathering. This sacred festival occurs once every 144 years and cycles between 4 holy cities in India. The Maha Kumbh Mela was held this year in Prayagraj, India, and spanned from January 13th to February 26th. It saw more than 660 million people from over 183 different countries, including America. This festival encourages spiritual growth, self-reflection, and renewal. At its core, the festival revolves around taking a holy dip in a sacred river, which is believed to cleanse the soul and bring inner peace. The Kumbh Mela brings together millions of people from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and traditions, united by a shared sense of spirituality, purpose, and community. It's a living example of the ancient saying Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the entire world is one family. As a youth growing up in the city of Roseville, I'm deeply inspired by the values of unity that are showcased by this festival, the Maha Kumbh Mela. It reminds me that our strength as a community comes from embracing diversity and working together for the common good. By fostering understanding and respect among all residents, we can create a community where everyone feels a sense of belonging and connection. Thank you for allowing me to share this important aspect of my heritage. By learning about the Maha Kumbh Mela, I believe we can all reflect on the importance of unity and work together to build a brighter future for our city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to make a public comment on any item that's not on the agenda? Now would be your time to come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment, and we'll move on to item 7.1, which is Housing Authority City Council Quarterly Status Update from the fourth.
Do the consent calendar.
Sorry. Consent calendar. There we go, Carmen.
Thank you. So all matters on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be approved by one motion of the City Council. There will be no discussion on consent calendar items unless a member of the City Council, staff, or a member of the public wishes to pull an item for further discussion. At this time, we have neither council or staff pulling an item for such request. Is there any member of the public that would like to pull an item for further discussion tonight?
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Thank you. Seeing none?
Second.
Thank you. The City Council will consider consent calendar items 6.1 through 6.18. We do have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll do our roll call with Vice Mayor Albert.
Yes.
Councilmember Haudeshelt?
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll move on now to item 7.1, which is a Housing Authority Quarterly Status Update for the fourth quarter of 2024.
Good evening, Chair Bernasconi and members of the board. I'm Tricia Isom, Housing Manager in the Economic Development Department. And tonight with me, I have Susie Cook-Turner. She's our Housing Supervisor. We're going to be presenting the fourth quarter status report for the Roseville Housing Authority, and this is for informational purposes only. So I'll pass it over to Susie.
Thank you. During the fourth quarter of 2024, there were 635 vouchers utilized in Roseville, 146 vouchers being utilized in Rockland, and 13 in other jurisdictions which were approved transfers out of the area. This equals a total of 794 families receiving rental assistance through the Roseville Housing Authority. RHA is currently authorized to provide rental assistance to 845 households, and in 2024 had granted us an additional 35 vouchers. RHA now has 279 special vouchers that assist residents at risk of homelessness. Our newest special voucher is called the Foster Youth Initiative Voucher, serving youths ages 18 to 24 who are exiting the foster care system and are either homeless or at risk of homelessness. We must collaborate with Placer County's Children's System of Care to receive the referrals directly to us. Although this program has been slow to lease, we are seeing a positive trend in 2025. Also, during the fourth quarter of 2024, Roseville Housing Authority celebrated its 50th anniversary. The Roseville Housing Authority was established in 1974 and began providing rental assistance with a total of 83 vouchers. Since program inception, Roseville Housing Authority has utilized federal funds in the amount of $132 million in rental assistance to house low-income households. Roseville Housing Authority is proud of its commitment to providing safe and decent, affordable housing to residents of Roseville and Rockland. And this award-winning Housing Authority staff is poised to continue this dedication for the next 50 years.
Due to prospective budget cuts to federal programs, there is unfortunately a lot of fear among residents who receive our federally funded rental subsidies. The tenants themselves do have protections as long as they pay their portion of the rent. They could ultimately be displaced if landlords decide not to continue on with the voucher program and not to renew a lease. This program only works if we have landlords, and that's why we established our landlord incentive program a couple of years ago. We've been very busy strengthening our relationships with our landlords over the last couple of years. Today's program funding only assists about 1 in 4 people who need it. So if cuts are made to the program, we would surely see an increase in housing instability and homelessness. The Housing Authority will be exploring productive and proactive solutions to ensure that our most vulnerable residents continue to have stable housing. That concludes our presentation. We're available for any questions you may have, as this was just an informational report for you tonight.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions?
The update. Thank you very much.
I have a lot of questions, but not for you.
I'll open this up to public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this item? Okay, we'll close public comment. As Tricia mentioned, information only. We appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 8.1. It's a public hearing for appeal of infill parcels, Sunrise Office Center Design Review Permit, Flood Encroachment Permit, and Tree Permit. I have to recuse myself because I own property within 500 feet of this parcel, so I will leave and turn it over to Vice Mayor Alver to hold the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we get started, I'd like to ask the city clerk just to go over kind of the process for the hearing.
Okay, no problem. So at this time, the record will reflect that Mayor Berlusconi will recuse herself on item 8.1, as she has a conflict created by property owned within 500 feet of the parcels. She will neither participate in the discussion or the vote on this matter, and she will not be returning for the remainder of the meeting. So the process for tonight's public hearing will begin by the opening of the public hearing. At that time, the staff will then make a presentation. The Vice Mayor will invite the applicant, Millennium Planning and Engineering, to address the council. They will have 10 minutes. That will be followed by an invitation to the appellant, Ms. Chapman, to address the council. She will also have 10 minutes. Then we will open it to public comment. We will close the public comment. And then if there's any public comments that were made, and Ms. Chapman has an opportunity to speak again to rebut or address for 3 minutes any comments that were made. And lastly, the Vice Mayor will invite the applicant, Millennial Parking and Engineering, the opportunity to do any rebuttals at the conclusion. And then we will close the public hearing. That's the process.
Okay, so at this time, our opening public hearing, I'd like to invite the applicant. Oh, staff. That's right. Okay, I've already skipped staff. Sorry about that.
Good evening,
It's
council
right here in
members.
blue.
I'm Mike Eismer, Development Services Director. With me is Greg Bitter, Planning Manager, Derek Ogden, Senior Planner, Shelby Maples, Associate Planner, and Mark Stout, City Engineer. Shelby is going to give the presentation. I'll hand it over to her at this point.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, council members. The project site is located at 705 Sunrise Avenue in the infill area of the city. The site is partially developed with a 4,700 square foot medical office building, an existing area with parking area with 47 spaces, and associated site improvements. The proposed project, a 7,300 square foot medical office building, would occupy the undeveloped portion of this parcel. The property is surrounded by a Dutch Brothers kiosk to the south, Kirby Creek to the north, a community care facility called the Terraces of Roseville to the east. The project entitlements include a design review permit to construct the medical office building and associated site improvements, a flood encroachment permit to develop a portion of the site which is within the floodway zone, and a tree permit to remove 2 protected oak trees. Here is the site plan for the project. As a part of the design review process, staff evaluates the proposed project to determine compliance with city standards. The building, as shown here in yellow, is in line with the existing Carbon Health building and is located as far from the floodway as the parcel can accommodate. Access to the site would be provided by the existing road off of Sunrise Avenue and will use the adjacent medical building's existing driveway. The parking lot and internal circulation is designed to connect to the existing use, as well as to ensure that there's adequate room for access and turn movements of both waste management and emergency vehicles. The design of the site has been reviewed by relevant city departments, such as Development Services, Engineering, and the Fire Department. It's also noted that there are 11 parking spaces used by the terraces located on the subject property, which does further constrain the design of the project. As far as parking, medical office uses have a minimum parking ratio of 1 space per 150 square feet. The combined total area of the existing and proposed medical office buildings is 12,000 square feet, which has a minimum parking requirement of 80 spaces. 47 spaces are existing, and the project will add the additional 33 spaces to reach the minimum requirement. Here are the project elevations, and as you can see, the adjacent Carbon Health building is in the rendering. The maximum height at the tallest point of the building is 30 feet, though it does reduce to 20 feet closest to the terraces. The occupied area of the building will be on the first floor with an unoccupied crawl space underneath, to ensure all activity will occur above the base flood elevation. The design uses a gray-brown color palette with stone veneer and metal accents and meets the intent of the community design guidelines. A more thorough evaluation is included in the Planning Commission staff report. As I mentioned, the project includes a flood encroachment permit for development within the floodway zone. I highlighted the floodway boundary here. Grading, parking lot construction, and drainage improvements will be constructed in this area, which is permissible with the flood encroachment permit. The project was reviewed by Public Works Floodplain Management, and applicable conditions were applied to ensure that the project meets the requirements and findings. The project originally included a request for a tree permit to remove 3 protected valley oak trees. On Monday, the applicant notified staff that after working with their arborist, they want to modify their request to only remove 2 protected valley oak trees. While they continue to request the removal of the 40-inch and 18-inch trees, shown here in red, they are going to keep the 36-inch oak tree shown in blue. During the entitlement review process, it was originally determined that given the location of the existing utilities, the required turning radii of emergency vehicles, and minimum parking requirements, the preservation with certain trees was deemed infeasible. The applicant has since determined that 1 additional tree can be retained using hand tools to excavate around the tree roots and implementing other protective measures. The applicant has agreed to modified conditions of approval that would require them to follow the standard policies and procedures for work within the drip line of the protected trees, as found in Section 19-66-060 of the Roseville Municipal Code. An additional 2 oak trees which were under the 6-inch threshold and therefore not protected will be removed, as well as a 14-inch non-native landscape tree. Those are shown here in green. The project proposes mitigation for the trees, including credit for non-native tree planting, partial replanting of native trees on site, and payment of the in lieu fee. This mitigation meets the requirements of the tree preservation ordinance. An initial study mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project and circulated for review from December 5th, 2024 to January 6th, 2025. The project includes mitigation for biological resources as well as cultural and tribal cultural resources in the event of unanticipated discoveries. Notification of the project was distributed to tribes which have requested notification under AB 52, and no requests for consultation were received. 2 comments on the document were received during the review period, with 1 including standard measures from the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, and 1 from Ms. Jennifer Chapman. Ms. Chapman's comment noted concerns with traffic, drainage, and tree removals, and requested an extension of the public comment period. For public outreach during the entitlement process, early project notification, environmental document availability, and public hearing notices were posted to the Arcona website, mailed to property owners and situs addresses within 300 feet of the project, and published in the Press Tribune. Notice for the environmental document was also posted on the city's webpage as well as in city libraries. The project complied with all noticing requirements. To touch on project history, the project was submitted in May of 2024 and began review. Staff corresponded with 1 neighbor, Ms. Chapman, in November 2024 during the entitlement review process which concluded with sharing the project plans. The initial study was completed and circulated in December for a 30-day review. Additional neighbor correspondence occurred after the publication of the staff report, as is further detailed in the memorandum to Planning Commission that is attached to the council communication. At the January 9th, 2025 Planning Commission hearing, 4 speakers opposed the project, expressing concerns about biological resources and trees, emergency access to the site, traffic issues, potential flooding, and concerns about how the environmental document and the public hearing were noticed to the public. Given the concerns about noticing which were expressed by Ms. Chapman, the Planning Commission was given the option to require a recirculation of the environmental document for an additional 30 days, as the comment period had concluded and therefore could not be extended. The Planning Commission chose to take action on the project without recirculating the document and voted to approve the project with 4 yes and 2 no votes. On January 21st, 2025, Ms. Chapman submitted an appeal of the project approval. The concerns are summarized here, and I'll touch on each issue area in the following slides. The appeal expresses concern about the noticing that was completed for the project as well as the environmental document. An evaluation of this concern is presented in the council communication, but as previously stated, the project complied with all noticing requirements. Staff did not receive any requests for notification, either verbally or written, during entitlement review, and the owner for the terraces was notified. Individual unit addresses for the terraces are not available to city staff, as is the case with other community care facilities in the city. The request for extension of the comment period was not received until the end of day on the last day of the comment period, and Planning Commission declined to recirculate the document. The appellant also states that she believes the staff report is deficient, lacking descriptions of adjacent uses and easements, future development, and other concerns. As explained in the council communication, relevant project details identifying the adjacent uses are included in the report, and there are no significant changes to utilities or formal applications for new adjacent development that would warrant additional discussion. The appeal also expresses concerns about parking and the appellant's belief that the project will not need the amount of parking proposed as part of the site plan. As previously discussed, the project has a minimum number of 80 parking spaces for the combined 12,000 square feet of medical office. Only one of the users, a family dentistry, is known at this time, so at this stage of the project, staff must assume that the remaining suites will also be occupied by high turnover medical uses. There is no opportunity for off-site parking in the vicinity of the project, as there is no parking on Sunrise, on the Sunrise driveway, and it was shared at the Planning Commission hearing that parking within the terraces facility is already impacted. Given the constraints of the site, including the 11 parking spaces on the subject parcel that are used by the terraces, the floodway zone, and the lack of off-site parking, it would be unadvisable to support a parking reduction for the site. The appellant observed a parking surplus for the existing Carbon Health facility, but it's noted that that building was originally designed for a restaurant, which does have a more intensive parking requirement. The appellant has also called for the improvement of the sewer access path along the northern portion of the property to be improved to have ADA-compliant accessibility. However, this is not designed as a pedestrian path, and there is no nexus to allow access or to require such improvements. The last area of the appeal we will discuss is the claim of deficiencies in the initial study mitigated negative declaration regarding the lack of a cumulative impacts analysis, as well as the lack of a site-specific traffic study and concerns about emergency access. The M&D includes an explanation that, as the land use assumptions for the site are consistent with the general plan designation, the cumulative impacts for the site were appropriately anticipated by the 2035 General Plan EIR, and no further discussion is required. Traffic and access were evaluated by engineering and fire department staff during the entitlement phase, and the project was found to be consistent with city standards. To further elaborate on the review process and additional analysis that was completed, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Stout, City Engineer.
Thank you, Shelby. Staff did analyze the project from...
Can we go back one slide, please? Yes.
Yeah, if you could stay on this slide. From a long-term planning level as well as a short-term access level. The city uses long-term traffic modeling to determine roadway widths, intersection level of service, vehicle miles traveled, and for determining roadway impact fees. Staff reviewed the project's long-term impacts and found them to be consistent with the city's traffic demand model and general plan traffic requirements. Prior to the Planning Commission meeting, staff evaluated site access efficiency and safety by observing driveway delay times, accident rates, and emergency response times. The additional trips being generated by the project were also evaluated and deemed to not have any additional significant impacts to the site. I'd like to also note that there was a study done in 2023 by our Public Works Department that concluded, in part, staff has monitored the location via traffic cameras on Sunrise and Coloma on no less than 10 occasions. No significant safety issues were identified that would require engineering modifications. So in addition to the analysis that the Development Services Department did, the Public Works Department had also evaluated the site previously a couple years earlier. For those reasons, therefore, a short-term access study was not contracted out to a third party. Post-project appeal, qualified staff elected to collect driveway access data and produced a short-term traffic study to help confirm the original determination of site access adequacy. 5 days of traffic data was collected, and staff generated average peak hour trips to the site consistent with industry standards as set by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. The study confirms staff's original assessment that delay times, safety, and emergency response times are all within acceptable norms for the project. We have a couple clips to share with you this evening. They're sped up to 2 times to help reduce the viewing time. They're 2-minute clips reduced down to a minute each. The first clip was selected from the AM peak hour with the highest number of trips that were observed, and the second is from an average AM peak hour. It should be noted that the AM peak hour is almost double the PM peak hour as a result of the morning Dutch Brothers traffic. If we could have clip number 2 up on the screen. So this clip was taken from the highest AM peak hour day recorded by staff and includes 2 different emergency vehicles egressing the driveway without the use of lights or sirens. Observations made by staff were that the ingress and egress queues from the site rarely exceeded 2 or 3 vehicles, northbound vehicles queuing for the Coloma traffic signal to the north. Northbound vehicles queue at the Coloma Way traffic signal to the north, but due to the level of service efficiency of the signal at that intersection, the vehicles tend to release approximately every 45 seconds. It was also observed that though there is not a keep clear legend adjacent to the driveway, vehicles routinely stop to allow ingress and egress from the site. Overall, staff found there were instant driveway delay times. There were very rarely instances of delay times exceeding 2 minutes at the driveway. Could we have clip number 4 now, please? So this was from an average AM peak hour trip rate into the driveway. Again, the traffic signals at Coloma Way, which operate at level of service B, allows traffic to flow on Sunrise Avenue with minimal delays. Though the existing Dutch Brothers creates a large volume of vehicles utilizing the project driveway during the AM peak hour, the fact that it is primarily a drive-through establishment causes vehicles egressing the site to be metered. As part of staff's analysis, it was determined that the average egress time between vehicles exiting the Dutch Brothers was approximately 40 seconds. So between the efficiencies of the traffic signal on Coloma Way and the metering of traffic exiting the Dutch Brothers, staff observed almost no site ingress-egress times exceeding 2 minutes, as previously stated.
Thank you. Go to the conclusion slide. Well, in conclusion, the project as proposed is consistent with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, and the community design guidelines. With the recommended conditions of approval, the findings for each of the requested entitlements can be made. Next slide, please. Therefore, it is recommended that the City Council adopt the resolution denying the appeal of the January 9th, 2025 Planning Commission approval, adopting the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and approving the requested entitlements subject to the conditions of approval. It is also recommended that the council direct staff to modify the conditions of approval to reflect modifications to the tree permit regarding the correct number of inches to be removed and the inclusion of conditions to implement the standard policies and procedures for work within the drip line of protected trees, as found in section 19-66-060 of the Roseville Municipal Code. It's also noted here that the appellant has requested a refund of the appeal fee due to her initial request to extend the comment period. As stated in the council communication, this request was made 20 minutes prior to the close of the comment period, and there is no requirement under CEQA law to accommodate such requests. Further, Planning Commission declined to recirculate the document at the hearing. Staff is unaware of a previous instance in which the council has refunded the appeal fee, and given the considerable time and effort required to respond to this appeal, the fee is appropriate and only covers a small portion of costs. Thank you, and we're available for any questions.
Okay, so does council, at this time, I'll open it up to council to ask questions of staff. Bruce, do you have anything?
Yeah, with regard to traffic count, we look at the traffic that's generated from the site, potential traffic. How do we factor in traffic that is background traffic that, let's just say, going up North Sunrise, trying to get to Lincoln? How do we factor that into the, that background traffic?
So that all factors into the delay times of cars getting in and out of the driveway. We know there's 37,000 cars a day on Sunrise. It's a busy arterial roadway.
Right.
There's a lot of traffic out there. There's quite a bit of traffic accessing this driveway. So when we took 5 full days of video, filmed the driveway, filmed Sunrise, and we're able to determine delay times of getting in and out of the driveway and how many cars we're stacking trying to get into the driveway. That's all accounted for with the volume of traffic on Sunrise Avenue.
Talk about the supercumulative analysis for long-range or long-term purposes. That may get at Bruce's question, just in terms of regional traffic.
Are you talking about more long-range regional traffic?
Yep.
So, yeah, so the city is divided up into over 500 smaller areas called traffic analysis zones, and this is in one of those zones. Each one is assigned a certain amount of land use, which generates a certain amount of trips. It all goes into our traffic model, which also has over 1,300 of these areas in the surrounding us in our neighboring communities. So that's all accounted for in the model. Every few years we go in and we update that model, and we make sure that it's accurate. We go out, we take counts. We're in the process of doing that right now. We have a consultant that goes out and counts cars on these roadways. We recently did that over 150 segments of roadways, and every traffic signal in town, we monitor the turning movements and the volume of cars going through intersections. All that's put into the model, and we're able to determine the efficiency of the roadways and more in particular of the intersections, what level of service the intersections are running at. Is that, were you looking for more of a big scale?
Yeah, I was, because I was trying to,
And that was analyzed with this project. We looked at the traffic analysis zone, and we accounted for the new project. We put those trips in, and they are accounted for in the city's VMT and level of service policies.
Yeah, I was just trying to parse out the volume of traffic that might be generated by this versus the volume of traffic that is absent this, so.
So like I said, there's.
I mean, not exact numbers, but there will be traffic.
So in the model trips that we put in the TAZ was 20 peak hour trips, which equates to a couple hundred trips a day, feeding onto a roadway that has almost 40,000 trips a day. So.
Thank you. No more questions.
I just had a question. I've been in some of the doctor's offices on that road. I'm just wondering, and I know I usually make right turns only because left turns are kind of dicey out there. Have they looked at, because you did a lot of traffic studies on a lot of different things, have you looked at either right turn onlys or, you can't make left turns except at during hours, or, those kind of things that are modifications?
It wasn't studied specifically, and I think the reason why is because we did look at the accident rates. Public Works did another traffic study pointing at the Public Works Director over here, but they did another traffic study that looked at accident rates and 3 years of accident rates. There was only 20 accidents on that road stretch between Coloma and Sunrise, and 5 of them in the vicinity of this driveway over a 3-year span. So I think the need to look at lefts out of there when you have less than 2 accidents a year, and the accident rate was within norms of allowable accident rates or expected accident rates for a roadway with that volume of traffic. So I think for those reasons, we haven't looked at restricting it. Certainly in the future, if it became a problem, that's something that could be looked at. You could look at restricting lefts. But like I mentioned, what we observed in the traffic is even when vehicles do back up from Coloma past the driveway, they're stopping and making gaps, letting people out into that 2-way left turn lane. For the people that felt like that was a little too dicey, that signal does clear out every 40, 45 seconds, and it creates gaps out there in Sunrise that we saw over and over again, and allowed vehicles to make lefts and get out into that 2-way left turn lane and then merge into traffic southbound.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
No questions for staff, but I reserve comments after.
Okay, and I probably have some comments after the presentation, but I was out there today from 4:40 to 5:15 to-ish with staff, just to walk through some of the concerns and to look. I had similar concerns, Pauline. I have a business I frequent regularly on Sunrise and often won't make a left-hand turn. There is that center, so I was surprised actually how easy it was during peak hour to get in and out, and I'm sure that's not always the case. But the traffic study that you talked about, I know you did some more recent stuff, but the other one you talked about in 2023, was that before or after Dutch Bros went in?
it was after Dutch Brothers. The one that evaluated the 3-year accidents it was early 23, so the accident rates were from 20, 21, 22. Dutch Brothers opened early 19. They were under construction in 2018.
Okay, and that
so
video,
all the traffic data we have includes Dutch Brothers.
5 days, the video that we just saw, that was in the last
Month or so.
so?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
post-planning commission.
And then on the I just wanted to make sure that I saw this. In the presentation, you talked about the applicant modifying to save one of the 3 trees. I wanted to make sure that that was part of your recommendation, the condition that the applicant would preserve that 3rd tree.
It is.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that I saw that. Okay, I have no, any other comments or questions? Okay, so I'm going to open it up and invite the applicant. So a representative from Millennium Planning and Engineering is here. We're going to give you 10 minutes to present your information.
Try to be quick. Yeah, I have a brief presentation. How's the presentation going to work?
Can we pull that? Yep, here we go. There you go, Rob.
Just going to tell you when to change it?
Yeah, you can just say next slide, and they'll get it in the back. Yeah.
Sounds good. Good evening, council members. Good evening, staff. My name is Robert Wood. I'm with the principal planner with Millennium Planning and Engineering, and I'm here representing the applicant. Happy to talk about the project design tonight, and I'll try to not have much redundancy with what staff went over. So next slide. So the first thing I want to go over is the project timeline and the process. Obviously, the council and staff know what this process is. You live it every day. But for the public, I think it's important because I would say there's a misconception that these projects are just rushed through, that we just throw it together and it ends up here and everybody's blindsided. So this project here has been going on for about 1.5 years. We kicked it off in August of 2023. And the first thing we do is we look at all sorts of things. I won't go through all of them for sake of time, but we look at make sure that the project aligns with the city's general plan, the zoning ordinance. We look at parking requirements, all the development standards, and a bunch of other stuff. And then we come up with a conceptual site plan. For this project, we did a pre-application that we submitted in December of 2023 that included a project description, a preliminary site plan, conceptual architecture, and we got comments back in early 2024. And then the real work begins after that. We do all sorts of studies for a project like this that goes through CEQA and environmental review. So we did a topo and boundary survey, a cultural assessment, biological. We did an arborist report, geotech study for looking at the soils, and then obviously drainage and hydraulic studies. I don't even think that lists all the studies. But then we take all that, all the studies, we refine the site plan and the architecture, and we take all the comments from the city, and then we come up with a really thorough formal submittal. And that happened in May of 2024. And then back and forth with staff, we had 2 more submittals to refine everything, and ended up at Planning Commission on January 9th of this year. Next slide. So this is an aerial view of the project. The yellow asterisk is where the proposed building is going. Behind that is the parking. And behind that is, you can see a heavily treed area. That's the riparian corridor that's associated with Kirby Creek. To the east is that large orange roof building is this terraces. That's a senior living facility. To the south is Dutch Bros, and the access to the site is to the west, which is Sunrise Avenue. Next slide. So the existing building is on the left. That's the urgent care. And the proposed building is to the right. The urgent care is going to be repainted to match the proposed building, so it'll fit in nicely. The proposed building is a 1-story modern type building. It looks taller than 1 story because it's raised up, which is a requirement to be near the floodplain. Next slide. So this is, again, the proposed building next to the terraces. The proposed colors and materials were intentionally done to fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. Next slide. So this is a blow-up of that aerial photo. You can see the oak woodlands that's associated with the riparian corridor. The X's are the trees that need to be removed for this project. The large X's are the trees that require protection and mitigation, and there's 2 of them that we're removing. Next slide. This is a different view of it without the aerial. There's an 18-inch oak that's removed right at the edge of the new parking, and a 40-inch oak that's in the middle that is required that we have certain radiuses for emergency vehicles. And we have to design it to a fire truck, which is the largest emergency vehicle. And just want to note on this slide, about 10 feet to the west of the 18-inch oak is the 36-inch oak. And at Planning Commission, that was shown to be removed. Now it's, as staff mentioned, that's going to be saved. Following the Planning Commission, we had shown it to be removed because it was kind of that gray area that we thought, well, it's close to our improvements. We're not sure if how healthy it'll be afterwards. So we showed it just to be safe. We thought, let's show it as being removed and we'll mitigate for it. Well, following the Planning Commission hearing, we took a closer look at it. We talked with our arborist. He went out and took a different look and said, with certain modifications and doing some hand digging and no cuts and fills in that area, that should have no problem whatsoever. So we feel confident that that's going to be healthy during and after construction. So that's a 36-inch oak that we're now saving. Next slide. So this is the replanting plan. This is a preliminary landscape plan that proposes 23 trees to be replanted, and that is in line with the requirements for landscaping through the zoning ordinance and also all the shade calcs that are required. 12 of the 23 will be native oaks, 7 valley oaks, and 5 live oaks, and that meets the criteria to mitigate for the loss of 2 trees. We're replanting 12 trees of oak trees. Next slide. So some of the highlights that the project that we looked at, and this is just a few of them. Number one, we obviously wanted to avoid the riparian corridor entirely, and we're well off it. There's along the corridor, there's a metal, an iron fence, and then back from there, there's a maintenance road for the to maintain the sewer path, and we're even beyond that. We're not up against. We're right near the path. The treatment of the surface runoff. Right now, everything just drains toward the creek. The existing building and the existing parking lot, surface runoff just goes across there and drains toward the creek. We're actually improving that because as part of this project, all the impervious surface from the new building, the new parking, and even half of the existing parking will all be directed to an underground infiltration and be treated. And a lot of it goes into the ground, but everything's treated before it goes back into the creek. So this actually improves the water quality of the creek by doing a project like this because of new requirements, LID requirements. We obviously had to design the parking to work for a fire truck, and that also helps with the trash trucks as well. One of the things I want to point out that staff also pointed out that there's been kind of this misconception that we're creating 80 new parking spaces. That's incorrect. We only are putting in 33 new spaces. There's 47 existing. We're improving those parking spaces and that access. And by sharing this, we only need to add 33 for a total of 80, which is nice because we can share the parking because they're similar uses. We have an urgent care facility and a medical/dental office, and that's great because they have the same parking requirements and we can do shared parking to reduce the impacts. As I already mentioned, there's 2 protected trees to be removed. There's 50 plus that are remaining in that corridor. I didn't count them all, but I know there's dozens. It's very thick. We're not impacting them at all. And as I said, 23 will be replanted, 12 of which are oaks. And we think the project really complements the existing neighborhood, the existing buildings. And from a planning standpoint, I think a use such as this for medical and dental office that's right next to a senior care facility is absolutely a perfect project. I mean, it's provides an opportunity for a walkable alternative for seniors who need medical or dental care. Next slide. So I'll wrap it up. This is just in summary. Again, we're proposing 33 spaces. There's 47 existing. We will have 0 impacts to any of the oak woodlands, which is the riparian corridor in Kirby Creek. We'll properly mitigate the loss of 2 oaks that are protected that we're removing. Skipping down, I think the project has been very thoughtfully designed and is to be compatible with the neighborhood. And we're enhancing and improving the existing parking lot and treating a lot of that drainage so it actually is an improvement to the overall area. Most importantly, we're in alignment with the city's general plan and the zoning ordinance. And lastly, I'll say that all the impacts are looked at with the reports, with all the back and forth with the city. They thoroughly look at all potential impacts. They're required to under CEQA. And they have to properly mitigate everything under CEQA to less than significant. And that's the criteria, and that's exactly what we have here today. So we're excited about this project. I'm glad to present it to you tonight, unfortunately under these circumstances. But anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any of me.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Got in right on time.
Perfect.
Good job. So we're going to now invite the appellant, Ms. Chapman, if you'd like to.
Just wanted to ask you
Okay.
Yeah.
a quick question. I was looking something up, so I may have misheard. Are you planting trees around the building or near the building or
Yes, around the parking lot.
around the parking lot?
They're not necessarily right up against the building because of fire requirements, but around the parking lot, we're planting 23 trees. And 12 will be oaks and 11 will be ornamental.
Thank you, and I apologize to staff. I looked at, on consent earlier tonight, we had setting a date for cleanup of lots and things like that that are a nuisance. I didn't see this one on here, but maybe we've gotten calls for service on this for where you're proposing for weed abatement?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay. Thought maybe I'd heard directly from them in 2023 that they were not pleased with the condition of that vacant lot.
I'm not aware of that offhand, but I can certainly look and bring that back.
Thank you.
Questions? Any other questions? No. Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Oh, sure.
So no other questions for you right now. We'll give you another opportunity if there's public comment to come back up after we've heard the other.
Thank you.
So we're going to invite Ms. Chapman as the appellant, and we're going to do this same amount of time, so you've got 10 minutes to present to us.
Hello, City Council and staff. Nice to see you again. So you've obviously seen these graphics already. There will be a few new images in here. I guess the key thing is that the Terraces of Roseville is 200 residents. Most of them are in assisted living. Many of these are essentially people with disabilities. There are literally disabled veterans. There are, people with all kinds of medical conditions. Some people are in hospice. Some people have, early dementia. There's quite a range. And so it is a special and vulnerable population. And I will just quickly point out, everybody can see that riparian corridor that's been talked about. You're going to hear me talk about the riparian buffer zone, which is another really important concept that I don't know exactly how you all define the corridor, but there's also this concept of a whole buffer zone around riparian. And anyway, we'll kind of move on here. But I guess quickly though, the key thing is the three properties all use this entrance road. And the entrance road, you've got Carbon Health and the future building. You've got Dutch Brothers and open space that's potential future development. You've got, the whole situation with the terraces, which is not only the 200 residents, there's 24-hour staff. I think there's 90 employees. There's an enormous number of vendors, contractors, home health care people, moving trucks, visitors, prospectives. There's an enormous amount of complex traffic. But not on this slide, but on one of the other ones that was shown, the Terraces has a zigzag Z-shaped property, and in the lower corner is other vacant land that is already in discussion for 20 cottages. And so this entrance road is having a continued enormous amount of traffic demand, and our key point related to that, the key point is all the emergency medical responses that are associated with the terraces. So there's pictures of the residents attending the first community meeting that we had on January 6th. That was as soon as I could kind of pull people together to let them know about this project. And of course I was doing that after turning in the MMD comments that, after realizing that the deadline on Friday, I realized that the deadline was that Monday. Anyway, next slide, please. So you're familiar with all the decisions that were made on January 9th. It was approving the mitigated negative declaration, the environmental analysis, and then the 3 permits: design review, flood encroachment, and the tree permit. And we are saying that there are potentially significant impacts related to traffic safety, health and welfare of the senior community, natural resources, which would include, both biology and hydrology, and aesthetics. Next slide. So I will just say that we do agree that these buildings are, very, they're nicely tasteful. They're not tacky. They are, harmonious with the terraces building. That part is fine. We said that the first night. I will say that this diagram, the first diagram that shows the new building relative to Carbon Health, I think it might not be to scale or something, because just even measuring Carbon Health, it seems like it's less than 25 feet. And if that other building is 30 feet and it's actually uphill, it seems to me that it's actually higher up. But anyway, the building will affect the light and sense of air and space. It will be affecting the shadow. We'll make a lot of shadows. There are going to be those kinds of effects. It's really very close to the entrance of the terraces. This lower picture is to just give you a little taste of the entrance road. Here's Dutch Brothers. They had to kind of back into the Dutch Brothers property, then cross over into the property across in order to turn themselves around to park in the fire lane. And you can see that there's already medical services truck in the fire lane. Behind them was a UPS truck. This fire lane is often continuously used of necessity by many large, mostly commercial vehicles. And so this is part of the situation. Next slide, please. So, essentially we are asking to continue the planning process in order to look at some more traffic safety mitigations, look at a little bit of redesign. You're going to hear a lot about my analysis of the parking situation, my counts, my actual data about the parking, et cetera. Waiving all fees of the appeal, not just our fees, which are $1,735.55, which is a lot to appeal a decision. Other cities, the most in any city I've lived in is Novato, $500, and other cities, Placerville, $400, and San Rafael, $358. applicant, as I understand, I heard the secondhand, I don't know what the real numbers were. Greg had told me originally it might be $5,000 to $10,000 for the hearing. I understand they may be paying as much as $25,000 for this process. We would much rather see that money go into the project and really feel that all of this money for a hearing and this appeal process should have been part of the planning process. And again, making the point about public notice. And the key point is that I was in touch with the planning department. It was triggered by seeing soil samples, which was a cue to me that we were early stages of this project. I had no idea that the environmental document was about to come out. Shelby did send me design drawings. I hadn't requested them because I had no idea that it would be that far along. She did selectively mention that the planning hearing would be after the holidays. She did not tell me that the mitigated negative declaration was about to come out and the comment period would be during the holidays. So anyway, these are the concerns related to the fact that we have to pay to have, engagement. Anyway, we feel that, again, waive all fees and put it into the project. A site-specific traffic study, yes, there's been some studies of some things, but this entrance road, all the uses with these three properties, and what it means to the ultimate situation. And then, yes, the Sunrise part of this needs some mitigations, we really believe. And there's many different ideas about what they could be. You got a lot of comments from residents today. One person, for instance, suggested a roundabout. I personally think that maybe the best solution would be kind of like a school zone, flashing yellow lights. We can't put a traffic signal because we've got, Coloma and Kirby, but what about slow down to 25 miles an hour, flashing lights, a sign that says 25 miles per hour, your speed is. I mean, there's just a lot you could do to slow it down. That lane, that center lane, sometimes can be extremely dangerous. People working at the terraces, I had never heard the phrase suicide lane, but I can say I understand why people call it that. It's very dangerous sometimes because you've got traffic going in both directions, and you've got traffic both directions in that center lane. So it's dicey. But we do feel that you need to authorize a parking variance. I'll get into that later. Utilize the parking spaces under Carbon Health, of which it has been used before. There are really nice parking spaces that you'll see in a moment that were used when it was an IHOP restaurant. Protect the large native trees. Thank you for protecting one of them. I will say that it's very close to the one that you're not protecting, and it seems really at risk to even that big tree that's being left. It seems at risk by all this other work that's going on. But I do appreciate the gesture of looking at that part of it. Minimize the hardscaping to protect water quality. There's still going to be automobiles. There's still going to be lack of water, absorption into the groundwater. The trees would also take up a lot of water. My understanding is that these plantings are going to be in boxes, in planter boxes. I know that the plant specialist, the oak specialist, will say these are not genetically the same as the on-site stock. You should at least use local acorns. But I am telling you that this sudden oak death, these pathogens in these nursery plants are a problem, and it's a totally different thing. It's really not like a 300-year-old beautiful oak tree. Survey the terrace's residents about potential new uses at the building. I appreciate, too, that, yes, it could be a real win-win because those people using those medical services don't need parking, and it's very nice. Some people are excited that there's going to be a dentist, and a lot of people are moving from outside the area and don't already have medical providers. So there's all kinds of possibilities there. Cardiology and acupuncture are two of my votes, but anyway, there's all kinds of things. Improve the path along Kirby Creek. You'll see later. It's a little bit of a separate issue, but it relates to the total circulation and ultimately the experience and impacts of the site and improving something when you're losing light and space somewhere else. But again, potentially restoring some of the native plants in the buffer zone. That's less important. That's more future with all of our community volunteers. You've gotten a lot of public comment letters, and I hope you've been reading those too. But next slide, please. So here's the entrance road, and this is extremely deceptive because it doesn't widen at the top. It's just how the camera took the photo. But on the other side, you can kind of see a typical scene of residents out in this entrance area. You've got the fire truck in the fire lane. You've got the terraces transportation bus coming, right behind the ambulance in this little circle. The MMD says is there a conflict with a program plan, ordinance, or policy addressing circulation, transit, roadway, bicycle, pedestrian? And, we're saying that there are a lot of things about safety in all of these plans, certainly in the general plan, and, all of these plans have a big focus on safety that seems to be in conflict with this. Next slide, please. Here is photos. You can see on the right is me driving out with, ironically, employees. A lot of people from the terraces actually go to Dutch Brothers. But anyway, this person was waiting to turn into Dutch Brothers. Dutch Brothers here is backed up to Sunrise. And, so it's very tight, but, cars going around to kind of get out in the lane. And you can just see the traffic at Dutch Brothers. It's huge at certain times. But substantially increased hazards due to a geometric design feature.
Ms. Chapman,
or incompatible uses.
We're out of time. I'm going to ask you to use the next 60 seconds.
Okay, can we just go through the slides? It's okay. We'll just go through the slides. I would like a few more minutes. I mean, if that's possible. I know that it can be requested.
I will give you I will give you 2 more minutes. I want to be fair, and then I'll add 2 minutes.
This is
to the
slideshow. It was sent to you earlier, so you all can see it, and the public will have access to it, so that's fine. But I just wanted to see the pictures, so if we can just go through the pictures. This is the watershed that we're in. Kirby Creek is about where that arrow is, Dry Creek Watershed. Next slide. There's salmon in the watershed. Very exciting year for salmon. There was 100 salmon seen in the watershed this past winter, and 2 of them were in Linda Creek, right around Ike School, very close by to us. So there's salmon potentially in Kirby Creek. Next slide. The watershed, of course, is a flood area, and you can see ours is the floodplain surrounded by areas that are apparently mitigated by levees, but our area is definitely underwater during that 100-year flood. Next slide. Here's the floodplain, and you can see the project area is, and they said something like 8 feet underwater in the transect areas that they've measured. Next slide, please. There's the Kirby Creek sign right where you come out of the path, and here's an egret that someone took out of the photo of their apartment. You can see a little bit of the creek. Next slide. There's the trees. That's an arborist that came out and looked at. There are 3 trees right there that are very near that X that is supposedly a 4-inch oak. All of these 3 trees are larger than 6 inches. And it doesn't seem like the arborist addressed it, even to say that they're there and they won't be affected. But we are concerned that they're not addressed in the arborist report. Next slide. So anyway, we definitely think aesthetics are a big deal with these big, beautiful trees and green space, and it is a big deal. Mental health, a well-documented mental health issue for senior citizens. Next slide, please. This is my traffic counts. I have made 37 counts of the cars using the parking lot. The most I've ever seen is 20. The least is 5. The average is 9. This model says that with the current use of Carbon Health, there should only be 31 cars. There should be 31 cars used, and 20 is the most, and that was like the holidays. Next slide, please.
So we are over time.
Let me just get to some pictures that I reference, if I can. If I can.
You know what? You're going to have an opportunity for rebuttal.
I need to just show the picture of the underground parking because nobody seems to be talking about it. Can we just show that because it's a critical image?
If we can just fast forward to the one slide.
There, it was right there. There it is. Okay, do you see all this parking? Okay. All of this parking, it's at least 15 spaces, and it's not being counted, it's not being used.
But I want to make sure that we're fair with time. So there will be, after public comment, potentially an opportunity to come back up.
Okay, and hopefully I can bring the slides back up because there's probably a couple things just to make points. It's not that many more slides, so thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to open it up if there's public comment on this topic. This is the time to come up. Okay, so seeing no we do have public comment. So we'll give you 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sean Pryor. I'm a local resident.
Lean in, please.
Oh, absolutely. My name is Sean Pryor. I'm a local resident, and I'm coming to you today as a local resident and not as a member of the Planning Commission. I want to express my strong opposition to the removal of the large 40-inch oak tree. And I'm very happy to see that the 36-inch oak tree is being saved. But the large 40-inch oak tree towards the back of the site, I believe that should be saved and could be saved if parking was changed. We were previously unaware that there was parking in the base of Carbon Health. This is shown on none of the plans. And I'm wondering why this was never mentioned or never shown. I don't believe we were given the whole picture of the site. The tree that's there is at least 150 years, and I think that we'll be losing a lot to lose a tree that's been there for 150 years. None of us will ever see a tree in that spot 150 years because none of us will be around at that time. So I think for residents of Roseville, current residents, future residents, our kids, our grandkids, they need to be able to see these trees. And just to rip it out for a couple of parking spaces, I think is wrong. It's absolutely wrong when there are alternatives on this site. I mean, if we needed the parking spaces to be a certain amount, then the building size should be reduced. I think we need to have a look, come back and have a look at this. I think we're making a mistake. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments? So not seeing any, I'm going to close public comment. I'm going to invite Ms. Chapman for up to 3 more minutes. You can come up and do a rebuttal.
Well, can we go, I guess, can we go back to the slides just so that I can have the slides up? Thank you. And so if we can just pick up where we left off. I will say that fire trucks, I know the point was made that something about turning around and getting fire trucks to turn around, but clearly there is a current property that is developed where fire trucks have to be able to turn around. So the current, if you didn't add any new parking, fire trucks, it's designed so fire trucks can turn around. So we already have the ability for fire trucks to turn around because the designs appear that it's mainly just, kind of adding on to the existing. So there's already a way around. I guess we can move on from this image because you all saw that. I just want to say the oaks, I've got pictures of turkeys, pictures of squirrels. I mean, these old oaks are really a complex thing with lots of aspects, and there's cultural uses. In fact, we had a Dia de los Muertos exhibit. We had acorns collected outside. We're part of it. We had a holiday exhibit, and we made a menorah with the oak branches. But we're very close to the Maidu Museum, where there's also many references to the cultural history associated with oaks. And being able to connect with that for the residents that live there right on site is really special. Next slide, please. Okay, this path, you can see it's really a hazard. It's an attractive nuisance when you've got all these people in walkers and scooters, let alone just the average person who could trip and fall. But this is at the on the Sunrise side is a manhole that you can access, from the sidewalk. But anyway, next slide. And here's, all the debris actually on the path, and you can kind of see the low point in the drainage. It should really have a culvert, and it should be level and safe to use. And again, it's also in this riparian buffer zone, which in your documents, your creek documents, is defined as 100 feet, which all those trees are in the 100-foot riparian buffer zone. Next slide, please. So again, we think that you need to continue this project, really look at this parking issue, look at, again, safety mitigations with this entrance road, with Sunrise. I think there's a lot of possibilities, but you would come up with the best one. So those are the key things. And again, waiving these fees because, again, this whole appeal process should have just been part of the planning process. So that's most of what I have to say, but there really have been lots of other public comments sent in there. There is, the reference of the FEMA study that talks about the EMS community saying sirens and lights are not the answer to relying that's going to get you out of a traffic congestion mess. And when we've got, that Sunrise situation, it is serious when people have some of the strokes and seizures and breathing issues and heart attacks, all kinds of things go on at the terraces, pacemakers go off, there's all kinds of things. Anyway, it's real, it's serious. And please look at the letter from the family the family nurse practitioner that wrote you a letter concerned about emergency response. Please look at the creek letter from the watershed folks. Please look at all the letters that we had residents submit to you today. There's a lot of people that are concerned, and they're like 80s and 90s years old. So anyway, we really hope that you will continue this project. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have all of what you just described we have in our packet, so thank you. I'm going to invite Mr. Wood. Would you like to come back up? And I will credit a couple of additional minutes. So if you want up to 5 minutes for your rebuttal, we'll start the clock at that.
Great, thank you. I'll just go through some of the points that I heard. First of all, there is no parking under the building. It's not a parking lot. The buildings are raised for flood control. They're not designed for parking underneath the building, so that's not, there's not extra parking that we're not counting. I think for me, to put everything kind of into a nutshell is change is sometimes scary for people, and I understand neighborhood concerns, neighborhood, people questioning what's going on around them. I actually commend it. I think the public process is a great thing, but I think that when you step back and look at this project in this location, it's absolutely a perfect project for this location. It's very minimal impact to the area. There's no impact to the environment. We've designed it such that we're protecting the riparian zone completely. We're actually improving an existing building, an existing parking lot, existing drainage. This is how things get improved, is through developers willing to take a big risk and bring these kind of things to the community. And this location next to a senior facility is absolutely perfect because it gives them an opportunity to be able to walk to services and not have to drive. And anytime you have services located where you don't have to drive, that's less traffic than another use would be that these people don't use. So I just think this is a great project. I think that once it's built, these people that are worried about it and have concerns, and some of them justified, are actually going to be super thankful that it's there and really be surprised and pleasantly surprised of how beautiful it is. It's a beautiful building. It's a modern, really nice designed architecture. The landscaping, with the 23 trees and then dozens of shrubs and ground cover, it's just absolutely going to be a beautiful project. The other thing I will say is you have to trust the process. And when we go through this process, these things are designed by professional engineers, professional planners, professional architects. When we do the reports, all the reports I listed in my presentation, those are all done by experts in their field. Professional arborist, professional hydrologist. These are experts in the field. So I know when, I understand people's concerns and questioning that this isn't, we're concerned about flooding, or we're concerned about the way the landscaping is going to be. Professionals in their field, experts in their field, are the ones reviewing this. And then when we put all that together and give it to staff, it's professional planners, professional engineers, the fire department. Those are the ones commenting on it and telling us what radiuses we need. How do we design this to make it safe for the public? So to just come up and say, well, we could reduce parking, we could make this smaller, the turns smaller, we could save this tree. We've looked at all that. That's what we do. We look to design these projects to minimize impacts and make it as good as possible. And I think it's great that we have this beautiful project that we're only impacting 2 trees, and we're replanting 23 trees. So I think that was all the comments that I had. I think the last thing that I heard was about reducing the building size. We started out with a building on this of 10,000 square feet because that's what was needed economically to make this pencil. We reduced it when we figured out we had to increase the trash, the size of the trash enclosure, and then we had to create radiuses for the fire truck. We had to reduce the building down to 8,000. That was the pre-application. And then through further providing accessibility and EV parking and all that, we had to further reduce it to 73 feet, which is what we presented here tonight and at Planning Commission. So we've already reduced the project by almost 30%. It cannot be reduced anymore. And so I'll just finish by saying this is absolutely a beautiful project, and I hope that you see that and that you approve it tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Hold on just a minute, and I'll just see if any of the council have questions of the applicant.
I have a question.
No, it's for the council at this point, sorry.
I'll ask it anyway.
No,
Did he talk about the 200 people? How many people did he talk with before?
There was an
not your
opportunity for public comment, so unfortunately I cannot take comment or have you address the application. I apologize. But we're going to move forward and see if any of the council have questions. Okay, so thank you. Or Bruce, did you?
None of the
Okay,
applicant.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
You can go ahead and sit down.
Thanks.
We're going to close public hearing. Thank you both. I'm sorry, no, we're closing the public hearing. But I do want to thank you, both the applicant and the appellant, for coming prepared and presenting information. And I apologize, but we're not going to engage in discussion at this point. The hearing's closed, but we may have questions, I know I do, of staff. So Bruce, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So, we saw an image of a path. That's not, is that a city path?
No, that was constructed, there's a sewer easement underneath that asphalt path. It's for sewer access. It allows utility vehicles to travel along that path over the sewer line to a manhole that's behind the terraces. So there's no pedestrian easement on top of that path. It's just sewer for a sewer line and sewer access road. And it is on private property. So it is on the applicant's property. So there's no public, it's not a public city pathway.
We saw an image of a lot of blue, like flooding.
Mm-hmm.
In the mid-'90s, that area flooded so much that Congress did, and a former council member's dentist
Kirby Creek
business was
flooded
flooded out. What does that image that we saw with a lot of blue represent? Is that water coming up out of the creek, or is that ponding that's happening in the parking lot?
I can answer that.
Go ahead, yeah.
So that image was from the FEMA floodplain map, and that's the flood zone AE, which establishes a base flood elevation. So the base flood elevation for this site is 142 feet. The project is reviewed by floodplain management in Public Works, and the project has to be constructed above the base flood elevation.
And what year was that? Was that recently, or?
I confirmed it again on FEMA's website today, so that is a current map.
And there's something called a letter of map revision, so which, sometimes flood maps don't take into account the built environment. Does this take in?
Mark, do you want to address flood?
Letter of map
So-
revision, which would reflect that.
Yeah,
okay.
Lomar, that typically if you're going to be filling in the floodplain and creating new improvements, you could do a letter of map revision. I don't know if anything was done like that for this project. Is the building encroaching into the floodplain?
Yeah. But it's elevated with the flood vents and the openings so that the flood waters can flow through that. That's why that first floor is designed the way it is. So the actual usable first floor is above the floodplain, but that sub-basement allows the flood waters to flow through and then recede during times of flood.
Which is consistent with the city's flood damage prevention
Yeah.
ordinance.
Yeah, so January 2023, atmospheric river after atmospheric river hit. Did that area ever flood? No, okay.
Not to our
Nope,
knowledge,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
That's it?
Done.
Okay. Pauline, do you have any questions?
No, I was interested in the flood question because I was on council when we put in a lot of massive changes. We had a flood plan, and we worked with FEMA, and we were able to make a difference in that area. It made a difference in a lot of parts of Roseville.
No questions for staff.
Okay, I do have some questions. When I was out at the property, you talked about what is required for the applicant to save that tree, like with it being close to the development. I'm wondering if you could speak to what the applicant needs to do to assure the safety of that tree that they're planning to save.
Sure. So the zoning ordinance for the tree permit section, the tree preservation section of the zoning ordinance, when you're doing work underneath a drip line of a protected tree, there's a whole host of conditions of approval. Hand digging around the roots. There's certain size roots you can cut, certain size roots you can't cut. You have to fence the area off. It has to be reviewed by an arborist as you're doing any excavations. There's I believe a $10,000 bond put in place that's a minimum of 5 years. So we monitor that to make sure that all their construction activities don't damage the tree and the tree's still healthy after 5 years. if something happened to the tree, the city wouldn't release the bond and would use that $10,000 for our city arborist and the city's oak tree preservation program. Am I missing any other big items on the conditions? But if the council decides to approve the project, as Shelby said in her presentation, we're going to ask you to direct us to add all of those conditions that are listed in the zoning ordinance, verbatim, into the conditions of approval for the applicant.
Okay, and the applicant, so if I'm understanding it correctly, is owning a fair amount of risk then that tree is protected?
Yeah, there'll be additional costs and then the risk of a $10,000 bond, yes.
Okay, thank you. In the appellant's comments, there was some reference to some activity on the terrace property. To my knowledge, there's no active applications or projects in, so I just wanted to know if there's any more information on that.
We've had one pre-application meeting with them and given them a lot of concerns that they need to address, and so far we haven't heard back. We've had a request for a meeting, but quite frankly, the request for the meeting came after we were in this appeal process for this site, and we've asked them to wait. So we have an idea as to what they want to do, but we don't know whether or not it can work. We expressed several concerns early on.
And it's certainly not an active application or a reasonably foreseeable project under CEQA.
Okay, and it's a different property owner that shares an access road to?
It's the property, it's the folks that own the terraces property and the terraces development building.
So I assume if any other projects came before the staff, that we'd relook at traffic and whether that changes the conditions at that entry and exit point?
Same thorough level of review that this project was subject to.
Okay. Can you address, I don't think you asked this, but we saw pictures of that underground parking at the old, what used to be the IHOP and now is the the urgent care. Can you speak to why that's not, or is it a viable option for additional parking?
Sure. So when the IHOP was approved, the developer at the time proposed to do some of their parking under the building. The staff at the time, now this is 1994 and 1995, the staff at the time when they evaluated that underground parking, it doesn't meet the city standards for a parking lot. The backup distances, the parking stalls, the piers. You saw on the image the large circular piers that hold the building up. The parking stalls are very narrow. The turning is very narrow. Staff was very concerned with opening that up for public parking would cause issues that it really might not be utilized, because some folks would go in there, park in there and realize that this is too tight. I don't want to park in here. And then there wouldn't be enough surface parking to be adequate to serve the restaurant. So it just so happened, I'm sorry to go into this tangent, but it just so happened that at that time, the city staff was working on a comprehensive zoning ordinance, and they were looking at changing the parking regulations for restaurant uses. The parking regulations used to be 1 space per 3 seats in a sit-down restaurant, and the staff was looking at changing it to 1 space per 100 square feet, which is what they did. They changed the zoning ordinance. And since they were working on that zoning ordinance change at the time, the staff recommended to the Design Review Commission at the time, hey, we're getting ready to recommend changing the standards. Let's use these new standards now for this project. We can accommodate all the parking that it needs, because I think it knocked it down it knocked it down by 10 or 11 spaces that they needed. We can accommodate all the spaces on the surface. We don't want public parking under the building, and we can accommodate the restaurant. And so that is how the project was ultimately built. So I believe if we went back and tried to reevaluate that, we'd have the exact same situations. If it didn't met the standards in 1995, I will guarantee you it doesn't meet our parking lot standards in 2025.
And there's a tenant in that building that's not using it for property,
yes,
or for parking.
Yeah, and they don't use the underground space for parking. That area is all locked off.
Thank you. I think that answered my question. So unless there's other questions, I'm going to open it up for council deliberation. Okay. You want to go first, Bruce?
Yeah, I appreciate the applicant, or the appellant, I'm sorry, raising a number of issues. But, these issues, especially, with traffic's always a concern. We share the road, we don't own the road, we wish we could tell people how to drive, and we can't. But given the traffic generation from this particular site, rather minor, the aesthetics I get the aesthetics, but I don't see any compelling reason for us to, what's the recommendation, to support the appeal. I'll just say it that way.
Okay, thank you. Pauline, do you have some comments?
I think we went over a lot of the things that were issues here, the flooding, the areas that, the tree mitigations, the private road, that's private road. And my concern about, you went over the traffic situation, but it also sounds like if anything else comes in, or if things change in the traffic patterning, you'll be looking out a road issues that you'd need to do on Sunrise anyway, because you will if you see something that's happening. And those are my main concerns, and they seem to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy?
A lot of my concerns were addressed too, but just a couple comments. So I was on Planning Commission as well as some of the other council members when the Dutch Brothers was going through and was approved. And at that time, it was, when I saw this come before planning and the appeal and everything, it triggered memories of the same conversations. I live on the other side of Sunrise and Kirby, so I'm familiar intimately with that driveway and that road several times a day. But the concern then was all of the traffic that would be created from the Dutch Brothers. And yes, it does create a lot of traffic, but to some of the points earlier, if the response time was impacted, given the proximity of your fire station on Sunrise and Kirby on the corner by the Rayleighs there, I mean, I would assume a response time within minutes because of so close. We would have, as a council, would have been updated if those response times were being impacted, if the level of service was being impacted. And to my knowledge, I have not received any of those memos, and it has not risen to the level of concern. I know it was a concern for the residents at the terraces, and it was in both the presentations. So I respect the fact that you do want a quick response time, and I think the city will continue to provide that, absent how much traffic the Dutch Brothers creates. I was out there last Thursday, and I sat out there for a little while, and I did notice there was one call for service with an ambulance and one of our engines, and I did not see any double parking or any instances where it created an impact for them to get to you guys, and I think that's important. I wanted to see it for myself. Staff highlighted it, so I think we'll be good. The other thing too is we just had a big priorities workshop a week or two ago as a council. Sunrise is one of our corridors, much like Harding and some of the other ones, and you've got a medical supply store, Bishop's on the corner. We've got investment in several other properties along that way, and many of them are medical oriented. And so I think this project being a medical plaza, no matter what goes in there aside from the dentist, would be a benefit not only to the residents of the terraces, but the surrounding neighbors as well. And I think it gels well with some of the other investment that's going on in that area, specific to medical and medical supplies and things of that nature. So, it complements not only what's already on that property, the two buildings, the Carbon Health, which will be painted to match the new project, but it also is helping to support and complement some of the other things going in there. So, I think it is doing two things as a project, and some of the other things I was going to mention have already been brought up, so I will not berate that, but those were my points. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I will, I think I have a couple unique comments to add. I empathize with the residents of the senior community, and certainly have not taken this decision very lightly, and I appreciate also the presentation and the time that staff has invested in really, I think, helping to answer questions, mitigate concerns, help us really understand the project that's before us and what we're voting on. So I appreciate that. I looked at this project in alignment with our city's strategic plan and some of the identified needs that we've done through that process. We do have an interest and a need in development and updating some of our older infill areas, which I think, Tracy, you spoke to a little bit. I also think as our community grows that we've identified a need to have more health care, access to good health care. Having dentists and medical capacity is something that fits with our strategic plan. I would agree with the applicant in that the proximity to a senior community, that it does feel like a very good synergistic use of the property. And I want to say I was concerned about the trees also. Probably traffic and trees were two things that I really was concerned. It's why I drove out there tonight during the peak time just to kind of look at the traffic. I don't live on that side of town, but I do have businesses I frequent regularly, and it is frightening sometimes pulling out. And so there is a choice of going right or left and having that center lane. I really appreciate that the applicant went back and found a way to save one of the beautiful oak trees on the property, and do feel that the mitigation that the city will hold the applicant to is sufficient mitigation to bring in some additional oaks. And while they won't be large and beautiful like the two that we're losing, they will grow over time, and I think that's a good thing that you were willing to do that, and that the applicant's willing to take some risk. You mentioned, you spoke to the risk that property owners and developers take in bringing projects like this to Roseville. So I think as a council, speaking for my view on the council, is I appreciate having folks that want to invest in bringing their business here to Roseville, and it again goes back to our economic strategic plan. So those are my comments. I'm inclined to to approve the project. I do need to ask before we ask for a motion to whether or not, if each council member can speak to the fee waiver. So that was part of the item before us.
Yeah, well, I'll start. While I appreciate the appellant's reference to fees in other jurisdictions, our staff report showed that our appeal fee compared to Placer County jurisdictions is lower, significantly lower. So it's a part of the process, and I think if I understood it, I don't think this is possible. The money that the applicant had to spend to defend the appeal or to process the appeal, it's already been spent.
Yeah, it's to reimburse the city for staff time.
Yeah. And so while that's noble of you, it's not practical. So the appeal is, the appeal price is the appeal price.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
No.
Is there a desire to waive the appeal?
No.
I don't see a need.
Okay, so, and I would support, I think, my colleagues, that I don't want to set a precedent. I think that the fees are there to cover, and as we talked about, probably didn't cover the actual cost of doing it. So with that, I'm going to open it up for the city clerk to read the motion.
Great, thank you. On item 8.1, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution 25-060, denying the appeal from the January 9, 2025 approval by the Planning Commission, and adopting the Sunrise Office Center Initial Study Mitigated Negative Declaration, SCH 202-412-0281, and Migration Monitoring and Reporting Program, and adopting the 4 findings of fact for the design review permit, and approving the design review permit, and adopting the 2 findings of fact, and approving the flood encroachment permit, and adopting the 2 findings of fact, and approving the tree permit. With that, may I please have a motion to
So
approve?
there's two other parts of the motion.
Appeal.
Oh, sorry. So one would be to deny the request to refund the appeal fee.
Okay.
And the other one is to direct staff to add a condition of approval to the design,
Permit.
to the tree permit, consistent with the city's tree preservation ordinance for conditions of approval to save that one tree.
Okay, it will be duly noted and part of the record, and that is the motion. Please have a motion to approve.
We have I'm sorry, are we having two motions?
It's all, it's three motions and one, yeah.
Right.
Move that?
Is this also on the appeal, whether to approve or deny?
Yes.
Yes.
The resolution is the appeal.
The appeal.
So I
Denying the
will-
appeal and uphold.
Deny the appeal?
Deny the appeal, which upholds the planning commission's decision.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure.
Can I get a
Bruce has a
second?
motion, right?
Correct, I need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Elverd.
Yes.
Councilmember Haldeshelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci. And again, the record will reflect that Mayor Bernasconi did not participate in this item on the vote or the discussion.
So we will have another opportunity for a second public comment on items not on the agenda. Have public comment? Not seeing any. I'm going to close second public comment.
I would say it's not on the agenda. I'll make a comment that's not on the agenda, just related to a traffic study that was done between Coloma and, it's related because it came up in the discussion, but it's important to understand that that was a study that was requested by the police department, which they never told me why they requested it, and it focused on collisions. It was accidents and collisions. And our residents brought up the fact, they brought up personal examples when we talked about it, about how there's many times a call when there's an accident, but if it's a drive away, a lot of times the police won't respond and there's not a police report if the cars can drive away. So it's not necessarily representative of all the accidents that happen. And so I just want to say that that traffic study also was not even brought up or disclosed to the Planning Commission. So
You're kind of edging into the.
it's okay. I'm just
the item
saying,
that we
I just
closed,
wanted to
but-
say that it was a traffic study that was done that really, as far as the Planning Commission was concerned, had nothing to do with the project. Nobody talked about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll close public comment, and it's time for council comments. Let's go this way this time. Pauline, do you want to
Let's do
start?
that. I'm all
I
for
know, I
that.
just keep, you're like in my line of vision.
Next time, it's your turn, it's your turn. Okay, a couple things. A couple meetings that I had, one was with Northern California Power Association, where we buy and sell electricity, and most of the times when we have our meetings, it's about making sure that our plants are functioning well, whether it's our reservoirs, our geothermal, which is like geysers, our fossil fuels, and making sure that it's run effectively, not only for Roseville, but also our other partners that are doing it for their community. So at that meeting, we also had Regional Water Authority put on a program along with the FBI, and it was held in Roseville, and it was on security for environmental utilities, so like your water treatment plants, and that was really interesting, really eye-opening of what to watch for. And so that was excellent. Also, what was just mentioned by our vice mayor, we did have a priority workshop, and I'm sure they all will say something about it, but it really goes for the making changes in the next few years, but it's a plan that's good for 5 to 10 years. And then we look at what needs to be added to it or modified, given the situation of things around us. But it really helps us a lot of brainstorming, and that was good. I was also going to mention, let's see, there was something else. I know what it is. Well, one thing, today they had the open house for Safeway off of Pleasant Grove and Fitiment. So it was opened, and people really enjoyed it there. It's got a pharmacy in it. It's got a Starbucks. It's got a gas station, and it's in an area that's really. I'm looking forward to having Safeway there. I find it really interesting because being on council and actually planning commission, like many of us here are, that project for a Safeway came before council many years ago, probably over 20 or 30 years ago, and it was approved. But, they looked at when it was a good time that they felt that there was enough people and to come into Roseville. And so they kept that property and decided now to build. So I'm glad they did. And I'm glad they're here, and it's really an asset for the community. Like some of these people mentioned here about difficulty in mobility and people around that Safeway, there's a lot of people, elderly people who do a lot of walking, and this will really be an enhancement for the walkable, people who need to go there and people who drive there. But that area is going to be happy. And the last thing I was going to mention, I was at a function, and this comes up every once in a while. We have this; it's on our website to explain more. But this is like the ambulance fee. If an ambulance came to your house and if they had to use emergency equipment and you end up going into the hospital, there's a fee for the use of the material. And many times our insurances will pay for it. And if that's so, it's so. But there are some insurances don't, and then the people get a bill for this. Well, here in the city of Roseville, if they all send this or communicate to the fire department this and show them that they did apply for, payment for this fee, that it was denied, that the city could waive certain fees for people whose insurance won't cover it. So I just want to tell people that if you had that happen, check with our fire department, and, look online, call one of us, but there is a method because most insurances pay for it because it's giving, life support to somebody, but also all the equipment they use, if it's not paid for, the rest of this, all of us pay for it. So just want to make sure that it's taken care of, but in a compassionate and the right way. That's the end of the story. It's enough.
The thing is, with all of us all going to the same events, if you're not the first one, you're sitting here crossing off the things that you've done and what's left. I will just add, I want to take the opportunity. We all had our council priorities workshop 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. It was very productive. Lots of good information was shared, lots of things about public safety and what us as a council deem as priorities to serve all of you better and to make our city, to continue to be a destination as to what it is. But a huge thank you I want to send out is to the staff. What a lot of people don't understand is behind the scenes, all of our department heads and various departments and leadership throughout the city. They work very hard to put that on and to provide the information for all of us, and which is then passed down to all of you. And even though it goes over 2 half days, it is a lot of background work, and their efforts just do not go unnoticed. So I just wanted to tell them thank you very much, and we do appreciate all the work that you put in, keeping us informed and letting us do what we need to do and get the information right. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you're up.
All right, SACOG Transportation Committee tomorrow, the California Association of Local Governments is having, they started today, they're having their conference tomorrow. Is a lot about traffic. And Matt Click, who's the Executive Director, of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agencies there. Jason Pavlicek, who's SACOG's federal federal lobbyist, there you go, is doing a presentation on how to navigate what's going on in the federal government and how it impacts the local government. WAPMA's on the 13th. I'll have a different hairstyle after Saturday. I'm going to go more... Pauline, you getting your hair cut?
No, I have a husband that is.
He's getting it?
Yeah.
Okay. Tracy?
I'll be there to support you like I have in the past.
I'll be there to support you.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll bring my checkbook, Bruce.
Yeah.
I'll be looking like Assistant City Manager Ryan DeVore. All right? Let's just say that. But, yeah, a lot of, Placer SPCA's got their event on Friday night. Yeah. So that's enough.
Okay. I think you left not much for me, so be short. So
yeah,
Pauline, I was out with Pauline
Yeah.
for Safeway. So I have lived first, what is that, east of that lot, and now the last 9 years west of that lot. And like many of the neighbors out on that side of town
Very
saw,
happy.
coming soon for at least 20, but I think you might be closer at 30
Yeah, it was a little longer.
years. So we didn't think it would happen, and we cheer new grocery stores on that side of town. We don't have much. So that was exciting, and it is a beautiful store. It was fun to
very
go
nice.
in and to be a part of that. And I would just say that as the new person on the council, I found the strategic planning workshops, the opportunity to meet with staff, and would echo, I think, Tracy's comments of just the amount of preparation and appreciation that I have for, for having that time with staff. And I think while we're in the, kind of midway in our strategic plan, the opportunity to revisit every year and see if we're on track. And I think, just seeing some of the successes of this last year, the fiscal planning that is, driven by the staff and council before my time here, that we're sitting in a good position. And it was nice to hear from our police chief on just some of the growth. I know that's one of the growing pains in the city, is just staying true to the safety of the community that we've all enjoyed, and to see that there's forethought and planning going into how to, grow our public safety with the growth of our city was good to hear. And I don't think anybody mentioned, but super excited about Fire Station 8, who.
There you go.
Open house, you guys, I know I was waiting to see if anybody would remember, but.
That's the
That's it.
acting
We
mayor's
saved it for you.
prerogative.
Yeah.
Big
Is it
announcements.
10 o'clock on Saturday morning?
Yep.
Fire Station 8, which kind of did a soft opening, but we're doing our grand opening on Saturday. And it is on Blue Oaks behind that Nugget Shopping Center off of Wood Creek Oaks. And hopefully some of the community will come out and celebrate with us. So with that, I think that's a good place to close. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Next meeting is March 19th. So we'll see some of you back here then.